Welcome to episode 49 of the Self-Care 101 podcast, helping you to crush overwhelm, stay focused and live better, with your host, Pooja K. McClymont. Thank you so much for listening today. In this episode, I'm interviewing one of my faves from the gram, Mr. Paul Silva. Paul is a fellow coach and began his coaching career working with people in addiction recovery and life transitions. I discovered Paul and learned so much from him about this topic, which is an area that I don't cover within my practice. I asked Paul if he would like to do the show because as much as we talk about self-love, it's often quite light, but addiction resides on the opposite side of this spectrum, the darker side of self-love, where if you aren't able to develop self-love for yourself, this could well be an unwelcome outcome. Like many wonderful coaches, Paul also draws on his own experiences to help others. In this show, I am humbled that he was able to share an extremely personal journey with addiction. Paul is currently working as a mentor and life transition coach with new coaches as they build their businesses and their confidence. This is an insightful show and one which had me a little lost for words as I listened to Paul's story. I hope that it helps others to recognise any symptoms of addiction within themselves or others, and if you would like to discuss any of your concerns, please do get in touch with Paul. He's an incredible person who will go out of his way to help, and I am privileged to now have him in my life too. So let's get to it. Hi Paul!
Hey, how's it going, Pooja?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this. You are my first international guest on the Self-Care 101 podcast.
Excellent. Thank you for having me here. And yes, hello from Canada.
Where are you exactly?
In Toronto.
Basically, I've just been learning so much from you because of the addiction work that you do. It's an area that I don't touch. I'm not qualified in, don't have the experience in. I'll always refer people. But it's always important, I think, as a coach, as anybody really, to continuously learn and, take on information and other people's experiences and things like that, because you never know who you might meet. And so I was following your journey and the sorts of things that you were doing, and it was just always so, how to put it, not emotional in the sense that it was sort of, making me cry every time, but you always had so much to say and so much personality and so much growth, and you were such an inspiration for me that I thought, if I'm going to do a show on addiction, it's got to be with you. So, Paul, I'd like you. You're so sweet. I love your faces. I'd like you to introduce yourself, please, to the listeners and let them know, I guess, what's your name, where you come from, how you started out as a coach, your addiction journey as well, and then we'll take it from there.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's great. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for the kind words. And I won't take. I always try to keep this part short and sweet because the past is the past, and it's just obviously it's a place of reference, not residence, as they say. Mm-hmm. I've been coaching for a few years now, and I was a chef actually for about 27 years. Just worked up the ranks, did really, in a lot of corporate. And, the last place I worked, I had about 140 people reporting to me. So that was, pretty stuff. And it was great, and I loved it. And until, just that tap on the shoulder of something greater that I wanted to do, something else that was propelling me, towards it. And I wasn't quite sure what it was that I wanted to do. And it was, my history definitely has addiction, alcohol, more specifically. And I mean, can you imagine a profession where you're surrounded by booze, like the hospitality industry? Mm-hmm. That's like a kid in a candy store for me. So, I was drinking for 25 years, which is, the same amount of time I was in the industry. And I went through a lot there in terms of, just it was hard. Like being a chef is challenging as it is, but then throw in, the kind of drinking that I was doing. It was just, everything was falling apart. Like, my reputation, losing money, losing jobs, even with my personal life, getting separated for a while and just all that kind of stuff and arrests and blah, blah, blah. And so it took me down a dark path and, I was able to, luckily, to turn that around and to make the decision to, change my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been over 9 years now of sobriety.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's, and I took a break, obviously, and I got back into my chefing, and it was so different, coming, like, you had a way of dealing with things, and it was no
Yeah.
longer there available to you. So it was like growing up all over again. And, it was through that personal development, because, if you're going to change, especially when it comes to addiction, it has to come from here. It can't be surface.
Mm.
You can only change when you get into the deep stuff, as you know.
Yeah.
And same with addiction.
Yeah.
And the difference is that you've got to also have the physical part of abstaining, and then you can get into. So that deep work, I was able to help a lot of men as well in that. And in that time, I started a well-known blog, and then I got into a podcast, and then I wrote a book. And so it's been very open for me, and it was very healing.
Yeah.
So I think all of that kind of came to a point where, this thing of like, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was just helping a lot of people, and I think it was it was a point where, like, the coaching came up, and at first I dismissed it, like, oh no, I don't. I had a coach once, but I don't really know much about it. And then, but it was a seed was planted,
Yeah.
and then one day I just woke up. I said, I'm going to check this out, and I did. And I knew someone in recovery who had just become a coach recently, and I asked her, and then before you knew it, I made a call, and I was in, and 10 months later, I was a certified coach, and since then, I've been working at it really and loving it. Just
Yeah.
really, like, it doesn't feel like work.
It doesn't, does it? Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean about it not feeling like work. I get off. I had just finished a contract with a client actually, and we got off the call, and it was like, all right, well, thanks, and all the best, off you go now. My work here is that sort of thing, and we were sort of, teetering on ending the call, and then we got off the call, and I was just like a, without being condescending about it, but that sort of nurturing side came out of me, and I felt like a really proud mum, like, oh my gosh, that person's just done such an amazing job, such amazing work, and they're going to fly now and be amazing, and oh, it feels so good. And when I think about sort of wins that I would get in my previous career in marketing and PR, the win would be great, but it was very short-lived, whereas the win of this work is so deeply fulfilling. Like, you can't even, I get so overwhelmed sometimes after a client relationship is over, where it's like, whoa, did we just do that? Did we just,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
It's such a rewarding feeling.
yes, yeah, and nothing compares. I don't think I've experienced anything that compares. I just wanted to ask you, when you were talking about at the top with your chefing,
Mhm.
and you said it was difficult to be around, obviously, the alcohol and everything else. What did that look like in terms of what were you consuming that it was so difficult to look at or be around that sort of environment?
It's when I talk about, my journey, I mean, I don't often talk about, how much, I mean, it was significant.
Hmm.
And, when I did get pulled over and arrested, and twice, by police, and my lawyer said I should have been dead. Like, my blood alcohol level was that high, and it had been sustained, and so I had a huge amount of tolerance, and that was just built up over the years. And so, I always say, I didn't have a drinking problem because I drank like a champ. I had no problem drinking. Um, it was sobriety I had a problem with.
Okay.
And it was, that was the challenge. And so, both when I was drinking and when I wasn't, when I got sober, it was that, like, I'm stuck with me. Ugh. And I always say, like, drinking was a way of washing the me off of me. It was like getting into oblivion because I didn't have to be around me. And, just like I said, over the years, my tolerance had increased, going from beer and then to wines and to vodka, and just, nonstop. It was painful. and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It's awful. And so making that decision, and it's a firm decision, when you've got to go all in.
And
There's
what does
no,
that look like? Show me what that looks like.
in terms of,
Making that decision, because when you said it, you said you've got to make it from here. But what's the difference between from here and your surface decision or your mind saying, what does that look like? Because I think that's what people really struggle with any sort of change that they need to embark on. It's like, but what does that mean to feel it?
so that feeling is, I can't do this anymore.
Okay.
I can't go on. And this can be anything. It's in a relationship that's not working, could be in a job that's not working. It could be some habits that you have. It could be, your diet, whatever, lifestyle, whatever. You hit a point, it's the bottom, right? And people think when it comes to bottoms, it's the arrest and the car crash and the, divorce. Those are consequences. Those are consequences. The bottom is emotional. It's here. And, those were the words I said. I said, I can't do this anymore. And it's like ego cracked open and some light came in. And so it's that decision, like, even though people swear off, okay, I'm not gonna watch that show again. I'm not gonna talk to that toxic friend anymore. But we come back to it, right? Because it's familiar. But it's that moment when you just know, it's just like, I'm done with that. I'm done. And so it's like a switch gets turned. And you just have to be ready for it, and it's some people can, depending on the situation and stuff. I needed like a massive amount of consequences for that to happen. And some people maybe, they get to that a little bit earlier. Everyone has their sort of path. So it's that I can't do this anymore. I'm done.
And was it one of those, did you sort of wake up in the morning one day and it was right, that's it? Or was
Yeah.
it an actual event that happened, like getting arrested, or no?
No, the arresting, I got arrested, I still drank.
Okay.
It was another consequence. It was, the last time I drank, it was a very quiet, nothing, there was nothing happening. I was just in a basement somewhere, just drinking. And I woke up and I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm done, that's it.
Wow.
Because the fear of drinking finally overrode the fear of getting sober. Because I knew if I were to keep going, like, I would be dead or in jail or wherever.
Yeah.
And so it was just that point, and I said, that's it. And then I went into detox, and then I went into treatment, and I haven't picked up anything since.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you some deep questions now.
Oh, go for it.
Are you ready? Okay, so, there are people who will have a drink, right? Come Friday night, they'll have a drink, or they will have a glass of wine or a gin and tonic, whatever, of an evening, or maybe more. Maybe it's a bottle and whatever. And that's perfectly normal in our society. We are stressed out, parents, it's like child in one hand, glass of wine in another. And I'm not making light of this, but it's just culturally what it's become.
Yeah.
So when you were in this sort of space, was there any one thing or one event that happened to you that got you started drinking more than was considered normal? And I am doing normal in inverted commas for those who aren't watching the video. But was there something like that? I mean, this is an uncharted area for me. So my questions, please forgive me if they're very basic, but I just want to get a good idea of an understanding of how addiction happens like that.
Yeah, what you'll find, and that's a great question, because some people begin to worry, and that alone is a sign. If you're worried, I don't worry about, am I having too many Brussels sprouts? I don't worry, it's not, am I having too much chana, or, it's not a question, because it's not in my mind. But, when we start to think, like, am I having too much? That's a good sign in itself. That now, for me personally, it was a gradual build up, just having, 15 and just stealing a few sips of beer, grabbing a beer, and for a couple of years, neither taking or leaving. Around 19, maybe it started to build up, for sure. And then it just plateaued for a while. Then it would build up and then plateau. And so it's a constant growing. in terms of tolerance, but really it's a downward spiral.
Right.
But that can take decades. For some people, it could take a year.
Yeah.
And it just depends because it's what the attachment to drinking is or drugging. It's what attachment are you placing on it? What is the emotional weight? What is it that we are avoiding? What is it that we are, enmeshed with when it comes to that habit? And so it was building, but certainly at some point I was consciously aware, like, wow, I'm really pounding these back, or hearing what other people are saying.
Yeah. And was it, I mean, the stress is a massive factor in the UK for so many types of disease, I guess is probably the way of saying it, but it's the biggest killer in the UK. I don't know the stats for Canada, but is that something that was contributing to what happened with you? Was it stress related? Was it more something specific emotionally that you had, used the alcohol to replace?
Yeah, it wasn't stress. It was self-worth.
Oh
And
wow. Okay.
it was there was some bullying that had happened in my earlier life. And I'm not saying that bullying was the catalyst for it, but definitely being a victim um, fueled me. For the longest time, it was like my calling card was
Yeah.
victim. Paul Silva, victim. There you go. Put that in your pipe and stuff. And that just fueled it. And it was just me at a very low level, energetically, low vibration. Just hating myself. Loathing is very common in addiction, right?
Yeah.
Being a victim is very common. It's that very low energy, and you get caught up in it, and it's like a feedback loop. And you drink to kind of deal with it, and then you feel guilt and remorse and shame, and then to numb that, you drink again, and so it becomes a vicious cycle. So for some people, again, it could be stress. It could be, but in the end, stress is stress. It means different things to different people. And it's just really, I think, personally, I feel that because there's so many different models of addiction, and there's not one that really everyone can agree on. Personally, I feel that it is a lot of the inner stuff. It is all the stuff that we've grown up with, all the fears, all the, there's anger and resentment and, self-worth and self-love and self-esteem and, self-confidence, all of the self you get wrapped up in. And this is a way to shortcut stuff. This is a way to, avoid stuff. And the problem is that it's a short-term solution.
Yeah.
And we suffer for it in the end. It does catch up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you turn towards sort of working with people with addiction. Now, how was that for you? Because I mean, you were drinking for a long time. You were in that sort of addiction phase for a long time, and then you obviously get better, and you've got sobriety, and now you're helping other people. How was that? Because like you said about when you were a chef and you were in the environment, that was obviously quite triggering. So how could you then coach others so confidently, I guess, like, knowing that you couldn't slip up, because you're going to hear them talk about their experiences, aren't you?
Yeah, and well, that's it's the idea of to keep it, you have to give it away, and so the there's the misconception that for some people that I can never if you're an alcoholic, you can't be around alcohol anymore. I was surrounded by it in the last 7 or 8 years. I was working as chef 7 years. And but it was nothing. It was like if it was rice, it was just another, like I actually, oddly enough, I was in charge, and ironically, I was in charge of keeping it so the other people didn't drink it.
Oh,
So, but it's not triggering, and it shouldn't be. If you're in recovery, it's not about avoiding triggers. It's about integrating, so that it's what I say. It's creating a life that doesn't need escaping from, right? And
yeah.
so drinking just doesn't appeal to me. Not because I'm white knuckling it and I can't go near it. Oh my God, I just got to cross the street when I see the liquor. No, I'll go in and buy, like I'll do that because it's inert to me. There's nothing attached to it. Yes, I have history with it, but for me right now in the present, there's nothing that it can give to me that I already have.
Yeah.
And so there is nothing triggering about it. There is, and so, but people who have that, I mean, I had that early on, of course, that's part of the process. I couldn't trust myself to go anywhere near alcohol. Of course, that's the weaning off and all.
Yeah.
If you're 10 years into it and you're still having that same struggle, then nothing's changed in here.
Yes. Yes.
So it's really about the change. And so working with others was a way of giving back because people helped me. And it was a way of also reminding myself that, that's what it's like. It's like keeping it green, as they say.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that because I have that same sort of feeling when I'm coaching clients. Like when we at the top of the call, well before we started recording, you asked how I was. I was like, not having the best of days today. It's just a bit woe is me. But if I was coaching a client today, I would feel so much better about myself afterwards because I'd be doing the work with them that I probably need to be doing on myself. And because that energy exchange is there and I'll be giving so much so that they can get through whatever they're working towards, it
Hmm.
feeds you, doesn't it? It's not just, of course it feeds your soul, but in that sort of positive projection, you know?
That's a great way. Yeah, I love that term. Exactly. You nailed it. And
Yeah.
it's about being of service. And you get a buzz from that. Like
Mm.
I remember having similar days and feeling down in the dumps, and someone that I was sponsoring or working with would call. I'm like looking at the phone. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pick it up. But I knew, well, first of all, that they were relying on me to be there, like I said I would.
Yeah.
And I knew that once I was done, I'd feel better. And of course, when I'm done, I felt better.
Yeah.
And it feeds into that feeling good about yourself. Because again, for someone like me, it was about self-loathing. There was a lot of that. And
Mm.
so to build self-esteem, it's about doing esteemable acts. And that, being of service like that
Mm.
was a way for me to do that and to
Mm.
build myself up. So it was like a win-win.
Yeah, yeah, that's really beautiful. I like that. I never thought of it like that actually. To build self-esteem is to do esteemable tasks. I think I'm going to steal that is what I'm going to
Oh,
do.
I think I stole it from someone.
Okay, great. So we're just passing it on. Fine. So tell me about when you were in the addiction phase before you had your moment of enough is enough.
Hmm.
Actually, when you mentioned it, got me a bit like personally choked up. It reminded me because that's with the depression, that's how I felt. I can't do this anymore. I remember being on the floor of my kitchen in these tears that I've never had these tears even with my son's birth, which was a difficult birth. I did not have the tears like I did at that time, and it was that I can't do this anymore, and it just brought back memories. But with when you were in the sort of the depths of the addiction,
Yeah.
what was happening around you? Were you still able to go to work? What was going on with your relationships? Did your family, your friends notice what you were doing? What did life look like around you?
Yeah. It was the worst kept secret, that's for sure. And it was, as they say, you don't, in active addiction, you don't have relationships, you take hostages. And,
What does that mean, active addiction?
is that it's far from a give and take relationship. Um, you warp everyone around you. Like your sense, the way you think. That's why sometimes they say it's a family illness because when there's someone in the throes of addiction,
Uh-huh.
um, it disrupts the dynamics for sure, right?
Mm.
It can't help but to disrupt
Yeah.
dynamics. And, people can feel like they're being held hostage by someone who is unpredictable, can be belligerent, could be this, could be suicidal, imagine living with that emotional, tornado
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
every single day, day in, day out. And unless you have your own protective mechanisms and support and community and, tools and everything, you get caught up in it.
Right.
You're right. And this is where enabling comes in and codependency and all that kind of stuff that plays into it.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people get addicted to the addict. And so it becomes very unhealthy. So, for me personally, it was, marriage very much in trouble, losing jobs, losing money, um, just I can't even remember all the like it was very clear that people thought like what's wrong with him, and
Mm-hmm.
it was not known it was that per se,
Mm-hmm.
but people knew that there was something going on, and some people figured it out and some people didn't.
And were they forthcoming with their knowing? Did they sort of try to help you or try to bring your attention to it, or were you very? I mean, you're quite a confident person, I'm sure. I can imagine you being quite a force to be reckoned with. But were you sort of, no, I'm fine, and
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
it was
and they believed you?
yeah, it was denied. And even though I knew that I knew,
Yeah,
um, I played it off or laughed it off or dismissed it or
right.
no one knew.
And
No
no
one
one knew.
in our circle, even my therapists. And I think it was, near the end, I actually confided in my therapist that I'm struggling with this problem. And he knew all along.
Mm,
So, like I said, it's the worst kept secret. But because it can't, when someone is in the throes of addiction, there's something you just, people around just know something isn't right.
right.
And some people, like, who the addict or alcoholic themselves, or those with substance abuse disorder, however you want to call it, um, they can be in total denial, or they could be like me, where at one point I realized what I was and
Mm,
what I was doing, and still said, that's just who I am, that's how it is, and just went along with it with this big charade.
right.
Uh, until, like I said earlier, until the consequences piled up, and then it was just like, boof, the moment of clarity hits
Yeah.
you. You're like, that's it, I'm done.
Sorry, I'm staring at you because it's it's strange doing this show because this is an area that I don't work with clients on, and obviously talking to you directly and learning as well as hearing your story, hearing your experience is really sort of, yeah, energetically I'm feeling it and just right there as you're talking. So sorry about that. A little staring at your face intently. Um, okay, so what was going on then once you'd sort of, I mean, you pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, but yet they all knew anyway what was going on. How were you able to navigate your relationships with your colleagues, your friends? Because I would assume you've still got some friends and family that love you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, people, there's a lot of people that I just, to this day, even though I've done what I could to repair things, there are people to this day that still don't want me around, and that's okay.
Okay.
There's no, there's no hard feelings. I've released any of that, and just through, again, just doing some inner work and
Yeah.
approaching, making amends, doing all that kind of stuff. So I did the best I could to release myself
Right.
of that. So that, if someone still feels apprehensive, and then I wish them the best.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad you said that about the inner work because it would take a lot of, there's one doing the inner work to release yourself of the addiction, but it's another to then do the inner work for the aftermath of what happened during the addiction, right?
yeah, well, it's just cleaning up your mess,
Yeah.
really. And
Being polite, but yes.
yeah, once you've cleaned it up, and how people respond to that now, that's none of my business. That's
Okay.
not up to me. And so it's really about being right with you,
Mm,
with yourself. And then the externals will just, that'll fall wherever it is. But if you're right with yourself, then there isn't anything, do I get pangs of cringing and start thinking of some things from the past? Of course I do. Every now and then
yeah.
I'm like, ooh, yeah, that
Yeah. Did
wasn't, that
that
wasn't,
really happen?
yeah, but that's few and far between.
Mm,
And, sure, of course, there are people that certain friends and family, of course, that are still have become like my biggest, cheerleaders.
mm, good.
And it's great. And I realize that not everyone has that,
Mm,
that I'm lucky.
yeah,
You know, some
for
people
sure.
are really alone in this, and this is why for recovery, some people seek community,
Mm.
and all that. So at least they have something there. But yeah, I'm very, very blessed that a lot of people stuck through it with me, and and I know I've probably put them through some hellish encounters at times. But, it's something that doesn't, I don't think about it very often. I really don't.
Wow.
That's because just now I'm focused on where I'm at and the work that
Yeah.
I'm continuing to do. We're
Yeah.
all, you, me, and our
Yeah.
clients,
Yeah.
we're all works in progress. And so that's just one chapter of the big book, of the whole book
Hmm.
of our lives. And so that was very valuable for me. And I learned a lot, and it got me to the place where I am now, which is
Yeah.
being to really plumb those emotional depths for myself, but also for clients. We can only take our clients as far as we've gone ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. So you, with you talking about sort of, doing that inner work and you said that the addiction for you was kind of rooted in self-worth, and you obviously had
Hmm.
to build that. Now, it's not the easiest thing to do, and the little ego likes to come into play and gets a bit confused. And what did you do, Paul, to that day when you said, right, enough's enough? What was your path? What was your course? What sort of things did you, treatments, therapies, people, experiences?
Yeah, I ended up going to a treatment that was 12-step based, and
Hmm.
so that's with the steps, and that's where there's a lot of inner work. Like there's a lot of writing and talking to people and sharing and really digging in deep, and then self-forgiveness and stuff. Like it's a lot. Like
Mm.
amazing the transformation that happens. If you're honest with yourself and open-minded and willing to do that work, which I was, because I was so desperate to not go back to how I was.
Mm.
So if they said you got to stand on one leg and howl at the moon every third, I would have done it. I'd have done it.
Did you do it? Was there any of that sort of stuff?
It was. I wish. I know. There's no
I
hate.
did some shamanism with my depression, so yeah, I'm all for it, honey.
I say that in half jest. Like I would have done anything. Like
Yeah.
on and so it was all inner work, which was
Mm.
wonderful, and it was new to me. It was scary. I resisted at times, of course, but I knew in the end that I just had faith in the process. Like, I hope this works. Like, I want this to work, and it did. And so and there's different paths up the mountain. That's not the only way that I know a lot of people in recovery, and that's just one way.
Right.
And some of it is self-guided and self-directed, and some people do this and stuff. But the common thing among all of those people who are in like a very happy and content recovery is that they've done some kind of inner work to shift their
Right.
mindset, to shift their emotional set, their heart set, spiritual set, whatever it
Yeah.
is that is important to them. And that's the key. That is the key. It's like you can't do surface work. It won't last.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
I feel my the reason why I'm laughing, obviously not laughing at what you've just said, but I'm focusing on self-love this month because I'm launching some new empowerment talks, and the sort of the first post, that I'm thinking of putting on social media or the blog or to talk about, or even my opening line of the talk is, let's start with what self-love isn't and explain why. And it's not that things like, the sort of the surface things with self-love is very much, having a luxurious bath with scented candles, or going to yoga once a week, or eating clean, the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the week, Monday to Friday, I eat healthy, but on the weekend I'm going to, one, drink excessively, I'm going to eat the chocolate cake, I'm going to eat the steak, I'm going to do this, all, really the extremes. And so I was going to couple it with, you can do those things, but it's only self love when you are making the conscious decision. If you are doing it because it's Friday and that's it, that's your reason, it's the end of the week, and you're giving yourself that pass, that's not self love, honey. That's self harm, essentially. Like, I was going to go quite deep into it. So when you say about that, sort of that inner work, it's not the surface stuff. You've got to go to those dirty parts that obviously none of us want to go to. We all have them. But if you go there, then you're not going to be questioning what self-love is. It will automatically be a whole lot easier to see what that looks like when you wake up in the morning, literally when you wake up. What time are you waking up? How much sleep did you
Yeah.
get? Why did you have that sleep? Why was it so important to get up at 5, 6 o'clock? What was see, now I could go off on one and I'm not going to. I'll save that for another show.
All right, listen to it.
But with self-worth, I think that's, like I said earlier, you come across a very confident person and someone on the face of it who wouldn't look like has, I mean, I know that sounds quite basic, but somebody who doesn't look like they've gone through something, or they're just very together. Like you come across very self-assured, very confident, not obnoxious, but just, yeah, accessible. So how when you were building your self-worth, is that what sort of made you confident, or was that something that you always had, but then the self-worth was almost like, how people hide their insecurities? Let's take social media for example. So you post a selfie of yourself, obviously there's a filter on it, and then it's been touched up with this app and that app, and then you post it with just an emoji or like no caption at all, because you're essentially feeling rubbish and you want attention and validation for your existence in a post. So they were faking it till they make it, kind of thing. Were you, with your journey, what's my point, with your journey, was that genuine confidence, or did that confidence come after building your self-worth? Where were you at?
Yeah, great question. Zero confidence. I
Right.
had zero confidence. Zero. I was introverted, a nerd, A+ student, got beat up. Very few friends, if any. Like that kind of classic archetype of that was me.
Mm-hmm.
And any confidence that I had, it's there. We all have it. I felt I needed to drink before I could talk to anyone. The fact is, I can talk to anyone,
Right.
but it was masked because I just had so much self-loathing. And so it's taking me, like, it's funny because even when you said now, like, you seem confident and all that, it just, even hearing that seems weird to me a bit. Old me is like, really? Like, that's the old me still comes out. I'm like, really? Are you confident? Like, because I spent so many years not feeling confident. And so when someone points that out, I'm like, it still feels a bit strange, right? So it's an ongoing process, right? And it's time humility, making sure that humility is attached in there. So like you said, it's not cocky and arrogant. It's being comfortable in yourself, and I think that's where the confidence comes. It's not, there's not a conscious decision. I'm going to be confident today. I mean, I can maybe hype myself up a little bit if I'm feeling a bit low, but it's there. It just shows. It comes out in how we speak and who we speak. Like it's there, and it just has to be nurtured, like anything that's been sort of abandoned or abused or not. It's like a muscle that we're using for the first time or haven't used in a long time. So it was the inner work that slowly built up my voice and recognizing myself, my authentic self, my true self, my higher self, and just aligning in that and just staying in that. That's where the confidence comes from. It's
And
not,
how did you?
I'm going to take a confidence class. It was just like, it just came naturally. It was organic through the work that I was doing.
Yeah, because the reason why, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but when you're talking about your authentic self, you mentioned that you started, the drinking in the smallest way, from 15, having a sip of beer here, there, and then it's sort of from 19 it became, now, not to say that you don't know who you are when you're 19, but you're still sort of in the remains of your parental influences, your parents, your guardians, their set of values first. So you're just about to emerge into the world to try and essentially figure out who you are. So how could you go from being 19, obviously getting a bit more serious with the drinking, and then how old were you when you sought sobriety?
40.
40. So that's a big chunk of time
Yeah.
to know who you are. How did you discover or recognize that this is me? This is me now. The authentic Paul.
That came from shedding everything that wasn't me. So, anyone who's in addiction, they stunt their emotional growth when they start using
Right.
generally. So when I got out of the fog at 40, uh, in many ways I was still that 15-year-old kid,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
so, and that's very common. Like
Mm.
it's almost like those charts they have for kids with the different like almost like emojis and saying like point to this one that's like they use that sometimes in like in places or when they're dealing with recovery.
Yeah.
They'll say point to where you because we emotionally regulated like we haven't been able to.
Mhm.
And so anger for me was something I feared fierce. I did not want to get angry, but when I got angry, it was just lost
Yeah.
my was no managing, there was no control, and so you don't know who you are because you're too busy getting away with who you think you're not are. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was in the end, it was shedding the old stories and the paradigms and the old, you know, the
Yeah.
the the misinformed parts and the shadow. And so once you kind of brush everything away, then kind of what's left in a way, that's sort of, and you feel like, oh, that's me. It's like coming home. And
Mm.
that's so when you are in, again, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be addiction. When you are letting go of what isn't you, what is remaining and growing is your higher version of you. It can only be. We're like we said earlier, works in progress. We're still shedding. We're still letting go. We're still, it's like throwing stuff off the hot air balloon and it's rising, right? Because you're just shedding the dead weight. And so that's an ongoing thing. But when you start to recognize and see, oh, there I am, and fully accepting that and forgiving yourself for anything before that, and continuing, then again, that's where the self-love comes. That's where self-acceptance and self-forgiveness and self-confidence and self-esteem and all of that starts to blossom because you've let go of all the scaly hide of anything that you aren't.
Yeah. Just gonna let that sit for a minute. That was, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing all of that journey. Let's switch gears a little bit. What do you do now for your well-being that helps you every day?
Every day, it's funny, these are practices I've had or some of these, since I got into recovery. Um, Number one, and this is an exercise I give almost all of my clients,
Mhm.
gratitude.
Mm.
Gratitude. So every morning I write out 10 things I'm grateful for. Sometimes I tell people send love to two people that really annoy you. And
Mhm.
that,
That's a
that's
good one. That's a really good one. Yeah.
and so people struggle with that and they squirm a little bit. I find funny just watching them squirm a little bit.
I just made the same face when you said it. I was like,
And I would do that too, and you start to actually believe it after a while. You
mm,
actually wish them well. You actually wish them happiness. You wish them the things that you want. And so you do that. So that's attached to gratitude. So
mm,
that's the other one. Is for some people, I say prayer, but it's really commune with the universe. However way that you connect to any higher power or anything that however it's expressed, I think that's a daily thing for me as well.
yeah.
Um, Moving my body. It took me 2 years after I got, sober to get into something where I move. So I started getting to running, and since then I've run like a couple marathons and done that. And I think it's very important. And it doesn't have to be marathons. It can be just moving your body in a meaningful way
Mm,
because it's that whole mind, body, spirit.
yeah.
And, even if it's going for a walk. I mean, how many times have any of us, we have felt something and said, and you just go for like a 10-minute walk and you feel so much better.
Yeah. So
It's
much better.
moving your body. Um, in connection, I think, having a connection of some kind every day, like if I'm reaching out to someone or taking a call and it doesn't, with a person or a group I found that when I isolate, and that's another huge hallmark of addiction
Mm-hmm.
is isolating.
Mm,
And so I can sometimes go default into isolate, but I have to gently bring myself back and stay connected because when I don't, it starts getting into old thinking again. So
yeah.
I'm very active, let's say, on social media, and people and talking to people, and so that's not been a problem. But I know when I start shutting off that valve,
Hmm.
I start to shift a little bit, and
Yeah.
so those are the things I do, and then I guess mindfulness too at times. Like that's something I've been practicing a lot more lately,
Mm.
and just staying really in the present, or mindful eating, or mindful.
Mm.
It could be even like I am brushing my teeth now, like just being like just lock into that moment.
Being aware, yeah.
Like as Eckhart Tolle says, there's no conflict in the now, so
Mm.
anything falls away because you're
Mm.
here now, and so doing those things on a daily basis, that's the minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah. I think that was interesting that you said about isolation because obviously we're at the time that we're recording this, we are going through the pandemic,
Yep.
and there's obviously been a lot of isolation. There's been a lot of memes, even on we've basically been living on Netflix or the internet, right? Let's be honest. Let's all be perfectly honest. During lockdown, and I mean, we were allowed to go out once a day for a walk with only your household. No sort of meeting up with anybody else. And I mean, for my family, the three of us, it was actually great. We got to spend time with each other. No one was sort of like worrying about work and being available. We were available. It was a routine. We created it. We made the most of it. But I know for a lot of people who are either working or not working, it was very easy to fall into, I'm going to say bad habits, because it's the overconsumption of something that makes it a bad habit. Essence, everything in moderation is okay, because I'm a big Real Housewives fan, so that's my I put it out there. I'm a big Real Housewives. I don't care where they're from. I watch all of them. Yeah, that's my thing. My husband thinks it's the most terrible thing that I do, but it's my thing. It's my bag. It's my escapism, and I will sit there watching them. Um, but it gets dangerous when you're sort of confined to your home, and then you're doing that. Now, obviously, we're all in different stages still from the pandemic, in terms of that all of us countries are doing different things, and over here right now it's still very much, if you don't have to go to work, don't go to work, but you can socialize now, but don't socialize too much. And if you do meet someone, make sure you're safe, but also have fun. And you're like, yeah, right. So a lot of people are still very, lots of anxiety, understandably, aren't really, because the rules aren't clear. And now apparently we're going through a second peak at the moment in the UK. So travel's been locked down again. And you're going to be more anxious to go out, even just to go to the stores. My husband works in retail, and I'm like, what's it like? And he's like, it's it's different, but people are shopping mostly out of necessity. So he's he's still making the same numbers he was making last year, this time last year. But the people who are coming to shop and to leave. And it's a different environment, which I guess is not such a bad thing. But with this whole, this quiet time, I call it quiet time, but the quiet time that we've had, the lockdown, naturally people are going to sort of create good habits and create bad habits, especially the longer it goes on, if you don't have the self-development tools to help you get out of it. Have you noticed anything, I guess, with clients or with people around you who've really struggled with this whole lockdown experience?
Well, it's those are great observations because we are going through here in Ontario. Toronto was last to kind of go into phase three because we're just the largest city, and there's a lot of people that were struggling to follow the guidelines. In terms of what clients are going through, I haven't heard too much. It is a factor for some people, for sure. It is a factor. Um, for some, it's not. But what you said about the habits, right? With you with the housewives, just, I mean, if that's the worst that can happen, I mean, why not enjoy it?
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I say.
um, it's there's a difference between chilling out and numbing out.
Hmm.
So that glass of wine or two glasses of wine, that binge watching a show, the cake, whatever it is.
Mm.
It's the intention behind it. Is this to chill out and, of course, relax, enjoy, life is to be enjoyed. Or is it to, escape something else? Is it a way to manage an emotion or emotions that feel unmanageable? And that's just a question that only you can answer. And so for clients, for anyone who's listening or watching this and are wondering, if you have that thing, and we all, there's that thing that probably everyone now is probably going to the top of their mind as I'm talking about this. The fact that jumped to the top of your mind is probably an indication that you might be questioning it. You might be struggling with it, right? Not an all-out kind of like my story kind of thing, but it could be an indicator that there might be some adjustment that needs to be made, mentally or emotionally or spiritually, whatever it is. Because I mean, we talk, all the memes, everything, how much we're eating and grocery, like just. It's some of it has shifted by nature. We can't help the pandemic, can't help if we have to stay-at-home orders and all that. But we do have control over how we respond to all that. And so it's really like, is this good for me? Is this productive? Is this getting me closer to my goals? Is it just, for some people, just mental health, period. Them, that's all that really matters. And people who have lost support. So for them, it might be just like, if I can just be at a good place, that is enough for them.
Yeah.
And be just enough. That's great. And so you get the wide range. Some people are learning a new language and building a deck, and other people are just kind of holding it together and just hoping that things reopen so they can get back to the support that they need. But in the end, it's really it's the intention. Am I chilling out or am I numbing out?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to steal that too. That's really key. Am I chilling out or am I numbing out? Because essentially that's it. I know that from as you were talking, even as you were talking through your addiction story, it was very similar to food. I guess food addiction in a way. I've never really labeled myself as being addicted to food as such, but I know that maybe more sort of binge eating. So if it was like years ago, if I'd had a bad day like this, it would be crisps and it would be chocolates and it would be cake. Cake is like the nemesis for me. That's my trigger food. So if there is cake, I will eat it, the entire cake, quite happily. Now, I know that I was eating my feelings way back when did I lose weight? 2008. I had my sort of treatment for weight gain. And when I was doing that, we did a lot of counseling and stuff. So I did a lot of the things that you've talked about, actually, that self-worth, why am I eating? And there was one thing that the counselor or the therapist said was, when you open the fridge, because it's going to happen, when you open the fridge, when you go to the kitchen, just count to 10 and think about why you're going in there. Like within that counting to 10 was just sort of, am I hungry or am I thirsty? So before I ate, she would say, before you go to eat something, have a glass of water, because it could be thirst, you know? I mean, that's the biggest misconception when it comes to food with weight and stuff. And then think about why you're going there. And then when you think about it, it's like, because I want to eat my feelings, because I hate the world and I'm ugly and I'm this, so I'm going to eat and make myself worse and stay in this cycle. And then the moment you say that out loud, you are kind of, tail between your legs and you walk away, or hopefully. But on the flip side, so she sort of did it in a way that didn't make it a negative. So obviously laughing at yourself is always good. But even when she was sort of saying, when you go out for lunch and you go to the cafe or whatever and you make the sandwich choice, are you just stand there before you just reach for the ham sandwich that you would normally get. Just think about it. What are you going to get? So mine would be cheese. I would always go for a cheese sandwich. I know, right? Cheese. Desert island food for sure. But I would always go for cheese. And it's so funny because now I don't go for cheese. I go for the chicken option, or I go for the hummus option, or I go for a salad, or I go for, but I still do the same thing that I did almost 10 years ago now when she taught it to me. Before I reach, I just stand there. And sometimes, oh my God, when I was like practicing this and I was actually doing the weight loss, I would stand in the shop for ages. I'd be like, "Can I help you? Can I help you?" I'm like, no, I need to make a conscious decision of what I'm about to eat. Considering, am I going out for dinner? What did I eat for breakfast? Am I going to be staying late? Am I going to, really thinking it through? What's at home? What's this? And it took about 6 months of doing this every time to now it's easy. Now it's second nature. So now my husband just gets annoyed with me. Just make a decision already. You know what you want. It's like, it's not a case of what I want. I need to know if I want it genuinely, or if I want it because you've upset me and I'm eating those feelings, or, which choice am I making? I need to make it conscious. And I joke about it now, but it's such a powerful tool to consciously make that choice, right? That, like you were saying about Eckhart Tolle, it's that mindfulness. If you're there, there's no conflict. It's just you are there in that moment, right? Just amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And that is, it's all about the intention, right? So that was a
Mm.
great share there in terms of what am I choosing? Because sometimes we say, "Oh, I feel powerless," and the thing is, you have all the power,
Mm.
and we have power. We have power to choose. We're not in charge of our first thought, but we are in charge of the thoughts that follow. We are not in charge of anything or anyone else, but we're in charge of how we respond to that.
Mm.
And and that can be a day, it was challenging at first because I had to make those every minute. And after a while, I was just like, this is tiring being so self-conscious.
I
Like,
know.
I just want to be ignorantly blissful, but you can't unring that bell because,
Yeah.
you start getting into the higher levels of conscious and conscious awareness, you can't go back. You can, but it's not the same.
It's
It's not
not the same. It doesn't taste the same. It just doesn't.
okay. It's like this is the pill I've got to swallow, but that's okay. That's growth, right? And
Yeah.
that's growth. And I was laughing at you saying because I also recognize that I had to do those kind of things too. And even now, like
Yeah.
I have to, as we would say, I have to tell on myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like you have that conversation. Sometimes for me, it's out loud. I know, Polly. I know. All right, let's do the thing that you need to do, even though
Yeah.
you don't do
Yeah.
it.
No,
And
no.
part of me, if it's like I want to yell at the kids, but no, I know. Part of you wants to be self-righteous and be,
Mhm.
the big blowhard. Let's get down to their level and let's figure it out. And because it's choice, right? It's choice.
Yeah.
And the more that we're aware of the options in front of us,
Mm.
then like you, it's like the
Mm.
menu board and you have all the options. The same way that emotionally and practically, like we have all those options available. It's like, which one do you want?
Which one
And
do you
you
want?
got to
Yeah.
sit there at the board for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah. It's funny that you're talking about that because about conscious awareness and we mentioned about sort of, social being on social media with work, we do that, but isolation is different. And obviously going through the pandemic, that isolation creates new stuff. And it's funny because I find that this digital world that we live in, whilst incredible on the one hand, didn't come with a manual, did not come with a manual. And I talked about it in one of my shows a couple of weeks ago, but cigarettes and alcohol have warning labels very clearly says this is what will happen if you consume this, and we'll still consume them. But the digital world didn't have that warning label. So all we've been doing is consuming, and creating the highest levels of depression in young people. I'm talking like 20-year-olds, 19, 20-year-olds, young people, even younger than that. That show that was on Netflix about the 13 Reasons Why.
Thing, yeah, 13,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
reasons
young
why.
girl who passed away. And I mean, I started watching that. I couldn't finish it. It was just too difficult, just because I'm just too empathic in that sense. It was just too emotional. But this is a very real problem that we're dealing with, and so much of it, Paul, is self-worth, it's self-esteem, it's self-confidence, it's not knowing who you are, it's not knowing what values are, not knowing that if you have purpose in everything you do, you make conscious decisions, you make conscious choices, you are more, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like you can feel your decisions, your choices, your actions, your behaviors, your reactions, etc. And it sometimes feels like these are really complex theories that are so far removed. And just for us self development people who are, hippieing it out, in the forests of South America or something, and just kind of, smoking the peyote and just, it's just for us. But it's just, it's, in essence, it's very simple, having a core set of values and purpose for what you do and making the conscious choice. Because I was looking at some stats recently about TikTok, actually, the new social platform, and it has higher engagement than Instagram. That's what they've seen, since it was released. And it was something that was created or released during the quarantine lockdown period, right? And it's had that. And the research stated that it was because it was short bursts of escapism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as a business owner, as a marketer, that was a very interesting thing. I was like, okay, right, well, that's what that platform does. But as a coach and, someone who's into the whole mental well-being space, I found that also very worrying that it was to go into my phone in order to escape life was the easier thing to do than, like you said, go out for a walk.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. That's that's a whole
I
another.
know it's a whole other thing, but it was because we were talking about conscious awareness. It was like we're so not consciously aware anymore, are we? And it's just, yeah, so much more difficult.
Yeah, it's digital is social media is a whole different beast, and it and they're recognized like addictions,
Oh,
as gaming is an addiction. It's
yeah.
recognized. Social media, I don't know if it's officially recognized, but we all know,
Mm.
we have at some low level some
Yeah.
addiction to checking our phone upon wakening. We can't let go of the screen. I'm guilty of that too. And
Yeah.
do a lot of work on social media. Like that's where I meet most of my clients. So I'm on it as a
Yeah.
work, but it's easy to get sidetracked with the shiny. And I admit I have TikTok on my phone because I was actually thinking of using that for marketing, but I've taken that off actually because I
I'm going to
found
cut this interview short now.
this is ridiculous. This is silly. And then I get caught up for like half an hour. I'm like, what am I doing? And, and then I weaned myself off quickly because I was like, this is not going to serve me at all. And
Mm.
I'm like, it was like maybe once every 2 weeks I'd forget it was on my phone.
Yeah.
And then eventually I'm like, yeah, that needs
Yeah.
to. But depression, all that, it's
All
huge
right.
in terms of self-confidence and self-esteem and comparing yourself. That's
Mm.
huge.
Mm.
Books have been written on this, and just in terms of comparing ourselves, and
Yeah.
we're comparing our faults and flaws to someone's very well crafted image,
Yeah.
and it can cause depression. It can cause a myriad of issues.
So many, so many, and you're right. This is a whole extra show, so I will move it along. So, what are you doing now, Paul? What are you doing as a coach now?
So yeah, I was working with people in addiction recovery for a while,
Mm.
and what I had found is that even during that time, I was getting a lot of new coaches coming to me because of, like I mentioned, social media. Because I was doing
Yeah.
a lot of social media, and I love that. Like in another time, I would have loved marketing. I listened to marketing podcasts, marketing books. I love it. I didn't think I would love it. I love it. I have to apply more though, but I'm learning about it. And so I have applied stuff and I'm building this. And so I had a lot of coaches coming to me. It's like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? And I would help them. And eventually at one point, I'm like, I resisted. This is resistance. I was resisting. I didn't want to be a coach of coaches. I had my own thoughts on that. But I had to embrace it. I had to, like, if this is what the universe is providing,
Yeah.
and why am I resisting it? Why am I fighting? Because what I think other people will think. And I had to be truthful with myself on that. And so then I just one day said, I'm embracing it, done. And so I pivoted. And so right now I do work with new coaches, like starting to build, like coming out of school, it's overwhelming, all these apps, what do I do? How do I mark? How do I get out there? How do I talk about? So I just help them set up and get the ball rolling for them. And so that, and I still get people in life transition. I still get, it's probably like 30 or 30% maybe of my roster. So I'm still getting people in different areas of their life and different age ranges. There's no real theme. And people coming to me for this, that, and the other. And so I love that too, because I love the variety and coming up, the challenges. But I also love, like, really working with new coaches and getting them started up and getting them out there, because for them to get out there, they get to help so many people. Yeah. And so it's like, train the trainer, heal the healers, whatever you want to call it, is get them going, because once they start going, then boom, they're off to the races and they're helping a lot of people. So to do that, the way I look at it is just, I'm helping way more people because I get to help someone who's going to help a ton of other people. Yeah. So that's sort of what I've been doing the last couple months now.
Cool, and you're enjoying it.
I love it. Like, I have a Facebook group that's growing, and just starting to build, lots of material and doing videos and all. So it's fun. I love it. And that lasts forever? Probably not. There'll be another call-in.
Yeah, that's it. That's. I think that's the beauty of life. Why not? If we've only got one life to live, why not just live it?
Enjoy it.
Just live it.
Be you.
Just live it. Be you. All right, my darling. I think that was a superb interview. We've gone way over time. Thank you so much for. I was just listening intently. I was like, I can't interrupt. This is. I'm learning so much right here too. So, Paul, thank you so much for being here. If there's anything you wanted to plug or where people can find out about you.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Facebook group. It's called the Coaches Cove, and my website is Paul Silva Coaching. So www.paulsilvacoaching. That's where you'll find me, and you'll find all the goodies where I'm Instagram. Yeah. Not TikTok though. No TikTok.
Not TikTok. Not yet. Anyway. Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate it, hon. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Care 101 podcast. If you enjoyed the show, I would love it if you would subscribe, rate and review so that other people like you can find the show. To find out more about me, you can follow me on the socials at Frankly Coaching or visit my website, franklycoaching.com. Talk to you soon.